empower, collaborate, and succeed. Break down software barriers in the classroom with Parallels Desktop. Enjoy a cohesive experience across platforms and compatibility without compromise. Run course-specific software on your Mac seamlessly, even if it's exclusive to Windows. From necessary software to your favorite apps, Parallels Desktop is the key to academic success. Students and educators save 30% on Parallels Desktop. You just need a valid post-secondary email address, and podcast listeners receive an exclusive additional 10% off with code EdUp10.
Outstanding.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you on another episode. I'm literally sitting in Reston, Virginia at the offices of Ellucian, where I am a brand new employee as the Vice President of Industry Engagement. And one of my colleagues said something to me that blew my mind. I put it online, but I'm going to tell you here because I still can't seem to get it right. And that is, for the first time since 2003, I have a .com instead of a .edu email address. And so therefore, every single person, and I mean every single person that has said, Joe, what's your new email address? And I have sent it to them. I have sent them .edu, and they come back and say, your email doesn't work. And I'm like, wait a minute. Ellucian's like a massive tech company. It seems like things should work here. And I find out that it's me, that I'm just ingrained to the .edu, but welcomed to the .com. Great things going on here at this company. More importantly, great things going on in higher education as we've come through some pretty rough times, still some rough times ahead. But you know what we do? We like to interview the most innovative leaders in and around higher education to give you a little taste of good things happening. And I've got one of those leaders with me today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get her to the microphone. She's Dr. Colleen Perry. She is the president of Goldey-Beacom College. How are you?
I am doing well, and I don't think I've ever received that much applause before. That's pretty amazing.
You know, we want to make sure that we get it right for you, Colleen. And let me tell you what's already right about you.
Okay.
You have a giant jar of candy on your desk, and yes. I'm just sitting there looking at it. I can see Snickers, Twix, and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. That tells me that you probably have some traffic coming in your office, and you need some candy in there to make people happy. How are you?
I am doing very well, thank you. I actually have had that candy jar sitting on my desk since about 1996, I think, maybe 95, a long time.
No one's ever taken one piece, have they?
Oh, yeah. It's been interesting. I moved my office about a year or so after I got to Goldey-Beacom from kind of being shut away in the back of a building, because the previous president, I don't think, really wanted to be in the midst of everything. Yeah. And so I moved it kind of front and center for a variety of reasons. And I put that candy jar usually on my desk so it can be seen from the door. I have a glass door to my office and then a glass door to the outer hallway, so people can see in all the time. I had to move it because when the sun comes up in the morning and like in the summer months, it starts to melt it.
So I had
to move the chocolate over behind me instead of on the front of the desk where people can see it.
Well, something else that's melting right now is me for misintroducing you. And Dr. Colleen Perry Keith, which I left off the Keith, and I'm looking at my page going, why did I write Keith there? Who's Keith? But I realized that it's you. Your last name is Keith, so I apologize.
Keith. Oh, no problem at all.
Tell us a little bit, level set for us. Tell us about Goldey-Beacom College. Where are you? What do you do? How do you do it?
Yeah, we are in Wilmington, Delaware, and we were founded in 1886, so about 138 years ago. And we were founded for the purpose of creating, educating a workforce for the business community, the very growing business community in the general Wilmington, Philadelphia area at that time. The first subject that we taught was business penmanship.
Amazing.
It really is. Because when you think about it, I spend a lot of my off hours working on genealogy now. And when you go back into the old census records from the 1800s and even before, you see this standard business penmanship, the way people wrote to kind of, standardize so that everybody could read what the material said. So, in the days before typewriters were popular and affordable, you had to be able to write a certain way. So that's what Goldie started teaching. And then as things changed in office machinery and that type of thing, we changed along with that. So for a long time, we were a business college, a business focused college. But in the early 90s, we expanded our curriculum and became added liberal arts colleges. So now we're considered a liberal arts college with a very strong historic business focus. And still everything we do is focused on, what are you learning here and how are you going to apply it in a career that's right for you? So very focused on outcomes and workforce outcomes.
Tell me a little bit about the model: online, on ground, hybrid, a little bit of everything, a little bit of nothing. How do you work it?
Yeah, little bit of everything now. Prior to COVID, we did nothing online. And so as with everyone else in the world, we had to move online during COVID. So we took advantage of that time and got authorized through our creditors to be able to offer complete programs online. And we started doing that. We had a lot of heavy lifting to do that we're still really working on because, our LMS was not sufficient for what we needed. And
of course.
Yeah. So
you don't know that you don't have the things that you need until you need to have them. Right. And then it's like, wait a second, we don't have this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And, I'd been a college president before for 10 years before I got here. So, you would think I would have known a whole lot of that, but there's a lot of stuff it's just not in your day-to-day work that you do. So,
yep.
We've gotten all that corrected. So now we are pushing ahead with online education, fully online programs at the graduate level and doing face-to-face and hybrid at the undergraduate level. And that seems to be working pretty well for us. We also just revolutionized our curriculum by creating certificates that are stackable. So you can stack a
100%.
We love that.
Yeah, and you can stack them into an MBA, a graduate degree. So we are starting to push out that marketing now. And I think that will become a great revenue opportunity for us, as well as the opportunity.
That's such an important topic. So I want to drill into that a little bit with you. Yeah. Is it preventative of so if you build curriculum with credentials, and let's say you build 15 unit credentials along the way or 2 or 3 of them, hopefully you're preventing a student who's moving out of the institution, because there are going to be some that leave with just credits that don't do anything. But if they get 15 of these credits and this certificate is in, data analytics or something, they could go work. And you have a greater chance of getting them back if they go and make some money, right? Is that the way you design them, to have these out moments where it's like, oh, how important is that, do you think, to the workforce and to the relevancy of the degree offering?
Well, I spend a lot of my time, off campus in workforce development meetings, meeting with employers, being a part of the state chamber and the Delaware Business Roundtable and things like that, where I'm at the table hearing what's needed. So that's something that people talked about, I've heard talked about for a while, and it fits so well with who we are as an institution. We started out just offering certificates. We didn't offer degrees back in the 1980s. So it made it kind of aligned well with who we were historically, or who we are historically, and keeps us relevant to the the business community here. And you're right, it does help people to stay retained at the institution. I was really excited one night. I was scrolling through LinkedIn, and all of a sudden up pops one of our certificates, and somebody had just earned that certificate. And they were like, I'm so excited. I'm on my way to my master's degree, but I got my first certificate from Goldey-Beacom College, and this is what I did. I mean, I was like screenshotting everything and sending it out to the leadership team and say, hey guys, look at this. Because it really, it's exciting. And and somebody had said, so when do you start your next round of classes? And he said, well, I'm going to wait until, the next 8-week session. I want to, I have these three things at work to do. So I want to get a foothold there. And then, so it's doing what we intended for it to do. So I was very excited.
That's outstanding. And I think that's, we've talked about that all the time, that institutions need to innovate their product. So many people I've talked to, so many podcasts that we've done, we talk about inertia internally. There's just so much resistance, faculty resistance, all these resistance points. But even if that resistance did not exist, and you have the same product that nobody wanted to buy in the first place, it wouldn't matter. So you have to evolve the product. Can you talk to me about product evolution, how you think about the future, program offerings, and maybe at the same time talk about what you decide not to offer and how you go through that decision making?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time here, and I always have in my role, listening to who's hiring our students. So when our students graduate, who's hiring them and what are they really needing? And then making sure that I'm a part of those, whatever the greater conversation is when it talks about like what's coming down the pike.
Yep.
And what do people really need? At one point in my past, I was involved with fundraising for a sales center, and we're a natural place for a sales center. And so recently we've had some meetings in and around the Delaware area for like the National Retail Federation and different groups like that. So I go and I listen and hear what they have to say, and there's a huge need for that. So we're looking now at some grant funding from the Delaware Workforce Development Board to be able to create a sales center and then have that be able to do some training for companies, but also offer that as an option to our students. Because so many people get their first job out of college in sales. And if they're well trained and understand what that means, it's a very viable career field for a lot of people. So
that's a fact.
Trying to stay a part of the conversation that's happening in the greater world and then bring that information back to campus. But then also, we have a career services advisory board. And so we're listening to what they're saying. And then we're listening to our alums and, what where their pain points are and, what could we do to make that better? So, it's really, you've got to become a good listener in these roles, because you're going to hear something out there that makes sense for what you need to do. There are in Delaware, they've got a lot of pathways. And so the K through 12 system has career pathways.
Yep.
And what, we need to take a look at, and we have taken a look at, what are those things that are coming up through the K through 12 system, students coming with those classes, that knowledge base, and what kind of credit will we give for that? And then do we even want to give credit for all of it? I mean, What is it that we could legitimately do that we can stand behind and say, yes, this person has competencies that, we're going to give credit for. You've got to pay attention to all of that. And sometimes we're just saying no to some things because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us. Mm-hmm. And given our curriculum is pretty limited because we were historically a business college, but we added some liberal arts majors into that. And then, we have a general ed curriculum. So, but it's not, what you can get here is not like what you can get at the University of Delaware, for instance, or Delaware State. So staying true to what it is that who we have been historically and what we do well, and then building on what we do well when a new idea comes along. Is that new idea something that we can take and do well? Or is this something that's too far afield for what we can really handle? Like, we don't offer any science courses. So something in the health sciences is a pretty heavy lift for us. I'd have to have chemistry labs and biology labs.
Yeah, there's also a lot of electives, and there's a lot of, there's upper level courses that you're going to have a heck of time finding faculty for, and so on.
Yeah. So for us, it makes sense for us to understand who and what we are, what our mission is, and be able to, build upon that in ways that make sense for us.
Epic.
I want to go back a step and talk about, you talked about the hybrid model, Tad. One of the things that was happening at my last institution is we had so many of our on-ground residential students taking online courses. And our online students that were at the undergraduate level wouldn't have any courses to take because all the on-ground students would take those courses. So there is some benefit to having alignment in here. We're going to be on ground here. We're going to be online here. And right, it's very hard to do because there is a increasing demand for online really at all levels. How do you meet that demand? How do you manage that? And maybe the better question is, how do you communicate your differentiator in a really crowded marketplace? Like, what makes Goldey-Beacom unique?
Yeah, and that's a good question because we're small. So like all small colleges will say, oh, our size matters. And, you get a lot of one-on-one, which is all true.
Yeah.
But we really are trying to make sure that when we're offering something, when all of our undergrad programs are currently 100% face-to-face with some classes that you can take online, especially at the upper division level. So we're doing that, but not every student can learn well that way. And so our advisors work pretty closely with students one-on-one to help them understand, what's your learning style and is this something that you can really do? We're NCAA Division II, and so we have 13 athletic teams, and we're not real big. Our total enrollment's about 1,200, 1,300 right in there. And it's not, so you can't always offer a section face-to-face and a section online because you may not have enough students to fill two sections.
Or faculty to teach them, depending on their schedules.
Yes, exactly. So, it's really understanding who the students are and what their needs are and trying to make those best decisions. When it comes to degree completion, what we do is if we're running into a student who's, for some reason they're off track and they're not going to be able to get this particular class because it won't be offered again for, 2 more semesters or something, then we're a part of a couple different consortiums that help, and we can import classes from there and put the student in that online class through that consortium and keep them on track to graduate.
Excellent.
So it's been, many days it feels like you're working one-on-one with students to, really help them to get through. It'd be easier, I suppose, if we could do a group kind of advising thing, but that's just not going to be feasible.
Yeah, or offer everything all the time, all at once, right? Just forever with no worry for expense because just anybody takes what they want.
Just doesn't do it. What we did do? We had, at first we had put our Master of Arts in Counseling Psychology program 100% online and, started doing that. But what we were finding is they're really missing out on some pretty key things.
Like clinicals and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. And those are just too hard. Plus students, didn't if they were in a counseling skills class, they didn't want to turn on their camera.
Yeah.
And that's problematic. So we've retooled that program. So it's probably about 90% online and about 10% face-to-face, but we've made those face-to-face pieces of the program like on a Saturday. So we'll have students come in on, at various points, not for every single class, but for several classes.
There's some programs that just make sense to have the in-person component, no matter, you could teach that online. You absolutely can. Now that I actually am in ed tech, I get to say anything I want about higher ed where I didn't before, because the institution I came from had the same programs. And it would go, no, you can teach all that online, and you can. But there is, especially in a world that is going to be dominated by technology, there is a human part that we must capitalize on. The liberal arts, we've just seen it. If you've been watching the news, you probably can figure out what I'm talking about, where discourse and our inability to understand each other or work through our differences result in these catastrophic events. And you just go, isn't higher education the cure? Isn't our ability to just be educated and learn how to speak to each other really the cure for our social problems? And if, to me, what's happened in the news, I'm ranting. I don't even know where I started. But I guess I want to come around to the value conversation, because it's so important for a president, for any of us in higher ed to talk about. Do you think that the value of higher education is stronger, weaker, doesn't matter around some of the events that have recently taken place?
I think the value can be stronger for exactly the reasons you state. The whole ability to understand the perspective of the other person is something that you get when you come, and you're in a class and you're dealing with people from other cultures or other ways of thinking, and you develop a sense of understanding and empathy. And so you kind of lead with that empathy, like, okay, here's what I understand what you're saying. This is what I want to do. And, when the Israeli-Hamas war broke out, we had students, on both sides of the issue. We didn't have any, demonstrations or anything like that, but we have a fairly international campus. So we, at both the undergrad and grad levels. So, we've just talked and helped people to understand. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, we have Ukrainian students and we have Russian students. And we had 2 Russian students actually starting shortly after that. And the Ukrainian students reached out and, started. Cool. Yeah, so the level of understanding. So we really let the students lead the way, and I was not disappointed, but I could tell, it was because we allow for understanding and dialogue and really focus on respect and listening. And that, seemed to help. So I do think higher ed has a role to play in all of that. And, sometimes you'll hear from parents like, I don't want to send my child to that liberal school or that conservative school or whatever. And you know what I found over time, and I've been in the field a long time. So students come to college having had all those years of being nurtured and taught by their parents and their family members. And they tend to leave college pretty much with the same outlook politically, religiously, that they came in with, because that grounding is so.
It happens when you're young. Yeah, all the education we get. It happens when we're in the formative years, right?
That's right.
When you turn like 14, it's like over already,
Right. But, I'd like to think that what college has done is made people a little more tentative about what they know and more willing to listen.
Empower, collaborate, and succeed. Break down software barriers in the classroom with Parallels Desktop. Run course-specific software on your Mac seamlessly and securely with Parallels Desktop, even if it's exclusive to Windows. This budget-friendly solution is the key to academic success. Students and educators save 30% on Parallels Desktop. You just need a valid post-secondary email address. Podcast listeners receive an exclusive additional 10% off with code EDUP10.
Epic.
Yeah, it opens, is there a correlation between higher education and an event that takes place? Well, maybe not directly, but everything that goes around that event, all the conversations, all the discourse, all the spewing of hate, all of those things happen when we can't control emotions. And hypothetically speaking, when you're in a higher education environment, it not to say forces you, but you have a respect for the institution of higher education. So you force yourself to become more respectful of the other person, because there's an expectation that we have to do that. And then it becomes ingrained in you, and then you're critically thinking, and then all of a sudden you're a better person. I just think that, one of the thoughts I had amidst all the disruptions that we've seen is how important education is, and where are, we have so many detractors that make it hard for you, right?
Yeah.
They make it hard especially for a small school, where somebody comes out and says, Americans just don't have any more confidence in higher education. Well, okay, let's look at that. That's a confidence index. It doesn't say higher ed doesn't have value. It just says there's a lacking in confidence. We're also lacking in confidence of the federal government. We're lacking in confidence in how much oil we can produce, and we're still going to produce oil, and we're still going to make cars that have gas, and we're still going to have a government. So why does it seem like it's so earth-shattering for higher ed when something comes out? Have you felt like that at all?
I have felt like that. I mean, when people will say, well, the value of a college degree just isn't there. And, why do I need to go to college anyway? I can get a good job without doing that. And I always, point to things like, well, over time, that degree has a greater return on
Yeah.
your investment than not having that degree. So there is that. But, also they're right. Not everybody needs a college education,
Yeah.
but pretty much everybody's going to need some form of post-secondary training.
And there is the important distinction. Post-secondary
Yeah.
or degree, it can mean lots of different things.
Yeah, it could mean whatever is needed. And that's where, colleges have to decide, okay, are we going to be all things to all people, or what's our role in that understanding? And someplace like a Goldey-Beacom, I can do the college stuff, but I can also do some training things.
Yeah.
So because we're small, so I can get those things up and running.
Yeah.
Easier.
And schools made big mistakes. I think so. Schools, and I was at a couple who made big mistakes saying, we're going to go to the non-credit market. We see so much. We're going to just sell a certificate. We're going to sell it for $299. We're going to have 30,000 people sign up for it. And then 3,000 of them are going to move into a degree. And I tried it, and so many of my colleagues tried it. And it's like, well, no. What higher ed needed to do is take that certificate, put it inside their degree, like you talked about, and when it gets old, and I've used this analogy before. I don't remember who I got it from or who said it, but like the ABC blocks you used to play with when you were a kid.
Yeah,
like that's your curriculum. And when A ages itself out, you pull out the A and you put in an X, and your blocks are there. You can take out certificates in blocks and trade them in and out when they become stale or not relevant. That's the ingenuity of higher education. And so then that way your degree has value on both angles, both on
That's
certificates that you now have credit for and toward a degree, right?
And if you're listening to the workforce and the employers, then it's, like supply chain has been the big hot topic for a long time. But transportation and logistics is a big one too. And, there are lots of things like that you can pull in. You can create coursework around, or you can contract with another institution or another organization to offer that and then pull that into your curriculum.
How are you thinking about digital transformation? Small school, probably limited resources, tuition dependent, as all schools really are mostly.
Yeah.
Digital transformation, the need to upgrade your technology, but also you have a smattering. It's like a great giant billion of star universe of choices you can make with technology and AI. Then you have your SIS system, you have your CRM, you have these foundational systems, and then all these other AI things that circle around. How do you rationalize digital transformation as a leader with limited resources? It's not like you can write a check for everything you want.
That's right. Yeah, we actually were having that kind of conversation yesterday we had a day-long planning session with my executive leadership team. And, we've moved to Zoom phones. And, so that's actually a cost savings.
Yeah.
It's not why we made the move, but.
Yeah, because you don't need the physical phone. You go to VoIP and all that. Yeah.
That's right. So we can, we can do that. And then we were talking about our main system, and, it doesn't, the module for the business office isn't a great one through them. And the module for fundraising isn't great. So, okay, we have to go out and buy these other things and bolt them on to the system and help them to work to go forward. And everybody, especially when you're small, if I only had this software, this would make it so that I don't have, it's going to save me 10 hours a week every week.
Right.
And I can use that 10 hours doing something else. I have yet to see that really living out that way. It's not like, I'm thinking about a Res Life software that we got last year, the year before. I don't need to fill this position if I have this software, because this software is going to do what I need for it to do. Well, okay, so we got the software, put it in place, and I'm still getting a request for not just one, but two more positions. Because now I need somebody to be the power user for that. It's like, we don't have that many that live on campus. I could do that.
I like your style, dude.
Oh,
So just let me put together my spreadsheet and we'll get it done. So, you know, it's the reality of what, people think it's going to solve all their problems, but it really doesn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing with tech is it will hopefully open up your business processes and your time.
Yeah.
As long as you get the infrastructure support that you need to run it. If you've got to run it yourself, then you have to hire infrastructure support, and then it really defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting conundrum that we have, because we know we have to upgrade. We know that as leaders, like the tech world is telling us that if you don't upgrade your products, they'll be end of life. We know we have to because students expect it.
Right.
But the how and the when are like the two hardest questions to answer. How am I going to upgrade this technology, and when do I need to do it, based on my cycle, based on my revenue, because it's very easy to go, especially this year. I can't see my top line revenue. It's very fuzzy right now because I might have a whole lot more melt than I thought I was going to have. So maybe I should wait 6 months. Well, if you wait 6 months, can you come back in enrollment in the spring? I mean, there's just the decisions that you have to make right now are consequential, as if they weren't before.
Well, and the money that the federal government supplied during COVID has been an interesting thing, because, when that came out, and we were probably like a lot of institutions, we bought some Zoom TVs, did the things that we needed to do. Well, it's been long enough. So those now need to be replaced. And, if you didn't factor that in when you made the decision to buy them, you're now like, oh my gosh, I have 30 Zoom TVs and I can't.
Everybody's buying flat screens, and then somebody's got a big boob tube sitting on the desk somewhere, right? On a projector stand.
That's right.
Like you're in 8th grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So it's hard, you have to think forward all the time. You're always thinking down the road, like, okay, if I get this, how am I going to replace it? And, lots of colleges, and I've, been the president at 3 now, will plan for things. And then, like they might have a computer replacement, desktop replacement, schedule. So every 3 years or 4 years, whatever, they're going to go through and replace all of them. But then you get to that 3rd or 4th year and it's like, okay, this is a tight year. So can we push this one off for another year? Well, the problem is you keep pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off, and then you don't do it. And then you're in a world of hurt when it just fails.
Thinking forward, such an important lesson for us to take away from this episode, and I'm thinking forward to hoping that you consider becoming a subscriber at the EdUp Experience, because you're going to get some additional insight from our amazing guest, who's going to be right back with us. But we're going to let her go for those of you that are considering subscribing but haven't pulled the trigger yet. Here she is. She's Dr. Colleen Perry Keith. I got her whole name right this time. President of Goldey-Beacom College. Colleen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Attention.
Empower, collaborate, and succeed with Parallels Desktop. Eliminate compatibility barriers with software that lets you run Windows apps and more on Mac. Try it and get an additional 10% off on top of the 30% educational discount with code EdUp10. Valid post-secondary email address required.